Okay, let's see what we've got in the old inbox. Well, time to sell out. In all seriousness, Fallout 4 is far from perfect when it comes to, well, everything really. For all the things that it does well, there are an equal and or greater number of things that it does not so well. That makes it a pretty terrible title for newcomers to the Fallout franchise. Is the rest of this video going to be so grammatically incorrect? You'll just have to keep watching to find out. Crunch into a tato and snuggle up close to the fire because I'm Gray, you're watching Gray Gaming, and today we're going over 5 reasons Fallout 4 is the worst Fallout game for noobs. Okay, we really need to have this conversation at some point. Fallout 4 is sort of infamous for its Radiant quests. What's a Radiant quest, you ask? Well, imagine you have a pair of hats in front of you. One is filled with mission types like go find and bring back this item, or go save this person, or go eliminate this enemy. The second hat is filled with a list of locations. Every time you want something to do, you draw a strip of paper from each hat and boom, you now have a mission that needs to occur at a specific location. That is what a Radiant quest do. Now let's go back to that first part of our description. Every time you want something to do. Yeah, get rid of that part and then you have Fallout 4's Radiant quest system. Okay, it's not like this is anything new. Bethesda first experimented with Radiant quests in Oblivion in their Shivering Isles DLC, arguably the greatest expansion pack of any game, period. Fight me. Now these Radiants weren't anything special, but they did sort of serve a decent narrative purpose. After you had completed the Shivering Isles main quest and found yourself the ruler of a strange new land, you were now, on occasion, expected to defend some of the settlements located in your realm of influence. That makes sense. New ruler, political instability and all that. Sure, these busy work quests can be stuffed into my role-playing experience and I can come up with a valid reason for doing them. No harm, no foul. Fast forward 4 years to Skyrim, hands down the most beloved Bethesda game ever, which makes me a little sad because I actually kind of preferred Oblivion. But that is not the topic of today's video. Skyrim took the concept of Radiant quests and doubled down. Now every little guild and minor faction in the game has someone sitting around just waiting for you to do their busy work for them. It took me way too long to discover that no matter how many of these I did, there would never be an actual end to them. Okay, that's on me. After all, you do have to be the less than intelligent person who goes back and asks for another quest every time they finish the last one. It's not even like Bethesda are the only ones that do this. The bounty quest in the newer Assassin's Creed games do this, pretty egregiously I might add. So why then does Fallout get so much ire? Why are there endless memes about them in every corner of the internet? The answer is actually pretty simple, because Fallout 4 is a dick about it. In pretty much any other game, you have to physically walk up to an NPC or a bulletin board and intentionally request busy work before they give you a procedurally generated quest. In Fallout 4, you could very realistically just be standing around and an NPC, mainly this doofus, will just walk up to you and give you one. You didn't ask for it, you might have too much on your plate already, too bad. Also, many of these Radiant quests have invisible timers on them, so just in case you thought you could leave them in your backlog, they will automatically fail if you take too long to actually do them. A second grievous transgression that Fallout 4 does is it doesn't even wait for you to finish the main questline for any of the factions before they start giving Radiants to you. In many cases, Radiants they are the quest line. Instead of Radiants being the busy work you do after everything else is done, in Fallout 4, they are all the busy work you have to do before you can even get to that point. And that's just wrong. Now, I am making this seem worse than it actually is. It's not difficult to work around this system, but it is worse than any other game I have yet to experience. So yeah, if you do not like the idea of Radiant quests, Fallout 4 might not be your thing. So most RPGs take one of two main approaches when it comes to story. Either you get a story on rails, which is you meet the same people, interact with the same groups and factions in the same way, and at the end of the game, a very specific story has been told. Others may take a more nuanced approach and let you start out the same way every time, but eventually you have a choice to make. Do you join one side of a particular story or do you join another? It's still the same story, but now you get to affect the ending based on which faction you chose to side with. With Fallout 4, Bethesda Bethesda had the courage to say 2 options, that's like way too few. We need like 2 squared. So in Fallout 4, we get 4 possible factions we can side with: the Institute, the Minutemen, the Railroad, and everyone's favorite faction that's been in every Fallout game to date, the Brotherhood of Steel. So many choices. This is great, but here's the thing, they all sorta suck. Every organization has a why, a reason for being. They have a specific mission that they pursue in order to achieve a magical, ethereal vision of the future. In Fallout 4, all of the factions very overtly state what their missions and visions are. Unfortunately, any degree of critical analysis shows that their actions 90% of the time do not fit their mission and vision statements. They say that they're going to do one thing, and in the very next sentence order you to go do something that in no way furthers that mission. This may be a decent quality in a high-ranking elected official who has special interest groups that they need to keep happy, but not so great for your role-playing experience. Fallout is supposed to present players with a harsh reality where it's difficult to find satisfaction given the consequences of your actions. It's not supposed to kill any satisfaction before you even have a chance to take said actions. Enough said, moving on. So this is kind of a difficult thing to do in an open world role-playing game, providing closure. At some point, the story needs to end, the quests need to dry up, and the world needs to be in a different state from how you, the player, have found it. But in Fallout 4, there's this little quirk that no matter how you choose to end the game, it's never truly over. If you choose to destroy a specific faction, they are still roaming the map, patrolling roads, occupying certain regions, haunting dungeon crawls. They never actually go away. No matter which faction you side with, they never actually run out of things to do, but these are, as mentioned in point 1, Radiant quests, busy work. There's never a specific post-game quest to consolidate power or stabilize the world around you. Things just keep spinning as if none of the epic stuff you've done mattered. It's not like this is an impossible task, and Bethesda has definitely done this with past games. Oblivion, for example, actually did this quite well. True, you did eventually run out of side quests to do, but you know what? That's called completing the game. If you still want to play, you know what you can do? Start a new character and try going about things a bit differently. Or if you're an extreme introvert who's deathly terrified of new experiences, you can do it all the exact same way you've done countless times before. Hi, I'm Gray. So this actually turned up on my 5 reasons Fallout 4 is the best Fallout game for noobs video, but you know what? Shut up. Fallout 4 is a busy game. While most other games that give you a choice in factions usually just opt to let you choose between being an authoritarian tyrant or a libertarian hero, Fallout 4 gives you loads of options from all over the political compass. Fallout games, and most other Bethesda games for that matter, include little mini-games like lockpicking or computer hacking to break the monotony of looting every trash can and rusty lunch pail in sight for 200-year-old mac and cheese. But Fallout 4 goes all in, giving you Falloutized version of classic video games like Donkey Kong, Pitfall, Space Invaders, and more. It even keeps track of your high scores in those games. But probably the biggest departure from previous Fallout games was when they were on their way to E3, and Todd Howard, carrying Fallout 4, accidentally collided with the guy carrying the latest DLC for whatever version of Sims was the most up-to-date at the time. And the guy from EA was like, "You got Fallout in my Sims." And Todd was all like, "You got Sims in my Fallout." And while the guy from EA decided to run to the men's room to try and wash it off in the sink, Todd was like, "You know what? It just works."
All of this just works. It's not, I'm not kidding.
You can tell I worked really hard on this script. Like the video, please. In all seriousness, the settlement building component in Fallout 4 is probably the most controversial, with some players absolutely loving the mechanic, others unquestioningly hating it, and the majority of players somewhere in the middle between grudging tolerance and lukewarm acceptance. If you're on more of the positive end of the spectrum and choose to keep playing Fallout 4 because the settlement building is so fun, well, there's pretty much no other Fallout game that gives it to you. I mean, there is the camp system in Fallout 76, but that's an MMO and there's a slight chance you might have to deal with actual people while playing your game, and that's offensive. If your enjoyment of the Fallout universe is mostly centered around your love of these quirky minigames and mechanics, you're going to be very disappointed if you go to play Fallout 3, New Vegas, or Adam Forbid, the original isometric games. It doesn't matter what Fallout game you're playing, Fallout 1, 2, 3, New Vegas, that one even the original fanboys don't talk about, there's always a consequence to your actions. If you do everything the correct way, there's a net positive result from most of your actions. New Vegas really hits you in the feels because as much as we might want to make the world a better place for everyone, someone is always going to get hurt as a long-term result of your actions, or just because of basic human nature, some may choose a negative path even if you did open the door to their salvation. It's tough, but sort of in keeping with a franchise that envisions a bleak post-nuclear apocalyptic world. Every game except Fallout 4, that is. There really isn't a consequence of your actions, at least none that you ever see. You don't get an after-action report showing the consequences of what you've done. You don't get to see the groups of people who were never eaten by wild animals because you chose to leave a certain critter alive that kept them in check, or the government that will form if you choose to stabilize the political situation found in-game, or the people who will starve because you were unwilling to make a hard decision regarding rationing. You don't get to see any of that. Most of this stems from an earlier point in this video, that everything always feels unfinished because of all the busy work that never goes away, but the rest just comes from a fairly lazily scripted endgame where 3 of the 4 factions end in the same basic result, and the story just chooses to end right there, in that exact moment rather than giving you any epilogue. It just ends at the climax. Imagine Star Wars that ends the instant the Death Star is destroyed with no medal ceremony afterwards. Lord of the Rings, where it ends as soon as Frodo chucks Gollum into the fire. Okay, bad example, that would have been metal AF. Terminator 2 that ends before Arnold sacrifices himself to preserve time and space. Well, that's sort of what Fallout 4 does. You just push a button. You know what? On the off chance you haven't actually played it yet, I won't ruin it. But trust me, the conclusion to the main story is not very satisfying. Now, don't get me wrong, it's still a fun game to play, and I have more hours logged in Fallout 4 than my next 5 most played games combined. Just don't get too invested in the main quest. That's all I'm gonna say on that topic. If you have played and object to or agree with any of these, let me know in the comments below. It's always fun to read your thoughts, or at the very least skim the first 2 sentences and skip the rest. Depends on the length of your novel, really. As always, it's been real, stay safe, and we hope to see you here next time on Great Gaming.